Bésame, 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 bésame mucho. Bésame mucho, como si fuera esta noche la última vez. Bésame, bésame como si esta noche fuera a ser la última vez.
Somebody better kiss those people. They sounded a little pushy there at the end. Hello, our users. My name's John Kulas, 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology. I actually forgot that today was Cinco de Mayo. Just happy coincidence that the intro music tonight was sung in Spanish. I guess you probably got about a 50% chance of that happening because most of the music that I play, a lot of the music I play, has participation and creation development from somebody from a Latin speaking nation. So, hello. I've been using R for 12 years roughly, but the majority of those years now I've also been executing full projects from within the same environment that I specify my R script. Um, and so that's what I do here on a weekly basis is I just hang out and make myself available if there's other people out there who are interested and not just using R for your analytical platform, but for within that same environment. For most people, it's excuse me. For most people, it's going to be R Studio. But staying within R Studio to write your paper or to make a presentation, or you can. Oh no, I hope this doesn't happen again tonight. Whatever it is that you're doing R for, you can embed your R analyses within a broader project, and that's what we're doing here on a weekly basis. I just came back from a conference, and it was very encouraging. I got to see. I love seeing former students, but some of them are actually using these processes. One in particular is doing his dissertation using these processes. That's awesome. That's so cool. I love it, love it, love it. And that person in particular, we may see if we can kind of hijack him for a session or two so he can show us all what that experience has been like if there's others out there who are interested in doing that. I think one of the things, oh, I mentioned the conference. One of the reasons I mentioned the conference is I don't typically talk that much. So I'm very introverted as a person. Uh, but my current work life and just life, I don't interact with that many people, so I don't talk a lot. So my voice is still a little bit gone from the conference. I'm here sipping some hot tea, which I never do. I'd make a terrible British person. I'm not a big tea person, but I got some honey in it. We're doing all of the old home remedy things, seeing if I can maybe hold up for an hour here tonight. So I do hang out for about an hour. Tonight will probably be closer to that hour estimate in terms of a projection. I have a tendency to go over quite a bit. I did this when I was a professor, and I'm doing this now, and we're doing these weekly sessions. But I think tonight, given the status of my voice, we'll probably keep it to about an hour. I did see we got a new subscription to the channel, so thank you. That's awesome. I don't really look into that, but I noticed numbers. So now we hit a nice round number again. We're at 130, which is again great from my perspective of someone who's been encouraging others and trying to promote this way of structuring your work, if you're working with data science or just anything really data oriented, it's great that there's that many people who are open and interested in this kind of thing. So thank you, Mr. or Mrs. 130, whoever you may be, and the rest of you also. So I appreciate all of it. So if there's any questions, that always takes priority here. That's kind of why I started doing this on a regular basis. But in the absence of those questions, what we do is we take a look at a capability and we just kind of focus on that capability. Last week, the week before, and this week are all kind of related to the newest release of Quarto. Quarto is the software that we've been mainly relying on to help us create these what are called publication ready products, like the slide deck you're looking at. The slide deck is available in the comments. It's also in the description of the video if you want to take a look at that. And then there's also a link to a tutorial where you can get started with this just on your own if you're interested in doing that. So because each week we cover these topics in an open-ended exploratory manner, we also do a recap. Now, last week we had all kinds of technical glitches, so I think this is the first time where our transition, our segue, our Rocky and Bullwinkle kind of lead into what happened last week. It's a repeat, but I don't think I didn't get to see it. So it's a repeat in terms of the little clip, but I don't think it's going to be a repeat for you because I don't think you got to see it. I certainly didn't get to see it. All right, Rocky and Bullwinkle, what happened last week?
You've got to give Boris Badenov credit. When he sets out to kill a moose, he does it like no one else. For as you no doubt will recall, he placed an innocent dish of macadamia nuts on Bullwinkle's lap.
Well, what have we here?
You eat those and they'll make you thirsty.
Truer words were never spoken. Bullwinkle drank 49 glasses of water.
And one for the road.
Of course, that much H2O is bound to produce a tummy ache.
Hello, drugstore. Send over some bellyache pills.
It was all part of Boris's mad plan. The delivery boy got a flat tire. Badenov switched the pills to more macadamia nuts, and you guessed it, Bullwinkle got a bigger bellyache than ever.
Hello there, Dr. Kildarovich at your service.
I'm glad you're here, Doctor. Bullwinkle's sick.
You just finding out?
The culmination of the evil scheme was to operate on the moose and not have him pull through.
You got everything, Dr. Darling.
Let me see. Paper clips, glue is all here.
And with that, Boris proceeded to go to work. However, the fuse box, in abominable manner, was in an advanced state of disrepair, and...
Hey, what gives with light?
I can't believe how much I've been sidetracked in that story by just missing a week. Like, literally, I was following the story, and then when they came back into it, because we didn't watch it last week, us collectively, I kind of lost my spot. I forgot that there was this grand plan, this grand scheme to do off with Bullwinkle. I guess that's kind of always the scheme of that cartoon. But last week, after we didn't get our transition from Rocky and Bullwinkle, we did actually take a look at some options for publishing the things that we make and hosting and sharing with other people. Now, the process that I use is not one that I would probably recommend for someone that's just coming into this way of structuring your work new. So if you're a novice at this, if you're just kind of getting started, I think the way that I would recommend you share your content is this route here. So Posit, the company that gives us our studio, the IDE that I've been using most commonly. They also have Positron, another IDE. They also developed and support Quarto, the software we're using. They've created and developed and supported many of our markdown packages that we use to help us communicate. They used to be called Our Studio, so they're rebranded now to Posit. But they have a service called Posit Connect Cloud. And again, if you're interested in this, easiest way to access this, I think, is to use my slides. I have hyperlinks throughout the slides. The title on this will take you to a description of what Posit Connect Cloud is. They have a free tier in terms of publishing and sharing this stuff. If you're a student, this is the way I would recommend going. And all you need to do is sign up for an account. I believe if I follow the hyperlink, it probably won't give you the view that you're gonna have because I'm already signed up, so it's gonna recognize me in my browser. And then the actually connecting once you have an account with Posit to use their Connect Cloud, the connection itself is really a lot nicer than it used to be. So currently, I primarily use GitHub to host and to serve my files that I want other people like you, good people, to have access to. Um, oh my goodness, this is gonna be a rough night. So I use GitHub, but I used to use a service also supported by Posit. They were back when they were known as RStudio. They had a site called Bookdown, and I gotta believe I was one of the heaviest users of Bookdown, that free site. It's been grandfathered. It's no longer active. But the way that you needed to connect to Bookdown through your local RStudio always had a bit of a sticking point in terms of there was one particular point in the connection process that was a little tricky, and what we found last week was fantastic, and it sidestepped that one tricky little potential glitch in the process really well. And so the way that we found that was really easy to get you to a point where you can just simply engage with a button in your RStudio session, and it will publish your content for you and give you an URL that you can share with other people, and they can access your slides, your dashboard, your website if you want to make a website. And that's through the RS Connect package. And you probably have the RS Connect package already on your local system. It should be one of those packages that comes bundled when you download RStudio. So it's not something that's going to come with base R. There are packages that come pre-bundled with base R. The stat package, for example, is one that is just always going to be there. But the RS Connect package should come with RStudio. So if you're using RStudio, you probably already have it. And then at the console, at your RStudio console, you just simply type this connect cloud user command. So load the library first, or you can use the double colon convention. Was it last week that we had an issue with the double colon convention? We had an issue with that double colon convention. It was either last week or the week prior. It was new to me. So mostly using the package name and then the double colons after it is a way that you can sidestep calling the library explicitly. Um, so if you do run into an issue, the only reason I'm bringing it up is you may want to load that RS Connect library and then use the function just by itself. It's just connect cloud user, open and parentheses, and that will pull up an authentication kind of wizard, and it'll walk you through really, really nicely, really, really easily, really, really quickly to get you connected, such that in future circumstances, if you create something and want to publish it, you can simply use the publish option within RStudio. In my RStudio, I think this is probably consistent with how other people's RStudios are set up. Ay caramba, that's a nice to be thematic here, to be consistent with the Cinco de Mayo theme. I think I'm just gonna, if I have to curse, I'm just gonna say ay caramba all night. And by the way, I've heard now from people who ought to know that Cinco de Mayo is kind of a made-up holiday. Like it's not. I don't, maybe it's important for like the hospitality industry. I imagine that it probably is. So what I'm doing now is I'm pulling up a project that has all kinds of files in it that are related to publishing, Quarto and markdown type files, where we might actually want to publish them. So what I did was I brought up this week's slides. So this index.qmd, this is the actual specification that I have, my plain text specification that creates the slides that we all look at and use. And I sometimes I say when I share these that you shouldn't this shouldn't you shouldn't be intimidated by this. So it's a lot of text, but you kind of slowly build, and it gets to look a little unwieldy, especially if you're not the author. But really, it's not that bad. It's not that complex. But what happened when I pulled it up was the QMD is the extension on these Quarto type files, and we see when I pull up a file like this that there's this publish option. So the publish option up here within my scripting pane, you're going to also see that appear within my lower right hand pane once this file actually renders. And this is going to render to a slide presentation, a Reveal.js slide presentation. Mine is going to take quite a bit of time because of the way that I have information structured with these weekly slides in particular. It's rendering it to a different spot, and it's actually pulling from different spots. So it's taking longer to render than you should expect yours to render, just because of the setup that I have that makes it easier for me to host on GitHub. The reason I wanted to actually render that was because if you take a look at the pane now, there's another option that showed up here, and it says republish. It'll either say publish or republish. It's saying republish for me because there is a long history of me engaging with that button to publish to the Bookdown site. I also share stuff on other Posit product sites, but last week we set up the Posit Connect Cloud, and if you walk through the process that we just spoke about, you will also have that publish or republish capability. And it's just, I looked for this icon. I didn't see it shared on the places I go to find icons and emojis and things like that. It almost looks like a hurricane type symbol, that light blue. But you'll see that you'll notice that in at least 2 spots in your RStudio environment. And all you need to do is press that button, and your content will be published. And then again, you'll have a URL, and you can share it with other people, like your classmates, if you would like to do that. So I think I hope so much that other people, especially students, start using these Reveal.js slides in particular for class applications, and just the opportunity not only to show but to share. So to host it, have it hosted on a free site, and then share it with your classmates. To me, that's a way to kind of grow this way of structuring things. There's got to be someone out there. There's got to be a student out there who says, "Ooh, that's neat. I want to do that." Or at least in my idealistic brain, I'm hoping that that's the case. Okay. So that was last week. That was publishing. That was fun. But today we're going to, probably for the last week, I would imagine, we're going to be covering something that was specifically called out in the newest Quarto release, 1.9.37. On that release, and I think it was just more generally the 1.9 Quarto release kind of, not marketing, but just info sharing that comes from the Quarto team and from the Posit people. They singled out a few things, some typist capability extensions. We looked at that a couple of weeks ago. They did call out Quarto Posit Connect Cloud as well, and that's why we looked at that last week. But a third thing, and there's not just 3 things, so there were several other things that they called out. But one that I kind of poo-pooed when I saw it on the release notes was list tables. And I'm like, we probably won't look into that, because tables, I don't typically specify tables outside of code chunks. So most of my tables, they are presenting data. And so with data, I'm within a code chunk, and the packages that I use are Tiny Table and DT and Cable Extra. Those work great. Those are fine. I'm like, why would I need to specify a table outside of a code chunk? And there are circumstances where you would. Um, but I looked into this a little more over the course of the last week or so, and this is kind of neat. So uh, the name is very descriptive. I guess I didn't think of this in terms of being descriptive, but this is literally creating a table from a list. And a list is a type of R object. A list is a type of R objects that is type of R object that you commonly see with the summary of data analyses. So a linear regression, for example, will kick out a list. And within that list, there'll be different things that might be of interest to you. There might be fit diagnostics, there might be plots, there might be a full data frame, but all of this stuff is held together in terms of it's all related to the analysis that we did. So lists are complex objects that whose elements can be other lists, it can be data frames, it can be scalars, single characters, it can be vectors, it can be all kinds of things. So you can put different types of things within the same list. And so a list table is kind of neat because that's saying that now I can display content that's unique, that's categorically different and unique. And so we can have a mashup of content within tables. And there's one example of a mashup here where you see this code chunk that's displayed within the table, which is actually really cool. If you wanted to take this and the clipboard is active here, you can copy that and just paste that right into your R session, and it will engage with that function and do what it's supposed to do. Okay, so let's check out list tables. I am really looking forward to this. I didn't do I tried a couple yesterday, I think, just for the first time. But I didn't take it for that long of a test drive. So I do have a hyperlink here that I think is going to be helpful for us. There is on the Quarto main kind of help documents, there is an entire chapter devoted to just tables and different way of specifying tables, and it's been updated to include these list tables. So I think I'm going to want to keep this open so we can check it out. Before we get to list tables, maybe let me share what a markdown table looks like. And this is why these are really unwieldy, I think, in terms of scripting. So I don't enjoy creating markdown tables. I don't think other people do either, because so this is what mine generally look like. There's vertical pipes on the ends of rows. There's also a vertical pipe specifying the end of one column and the beginning of another column. There are typically dashes that indicate whether something is considered a header or not considered a header. These get really unwieldy, and one of the neat things that Posit has done with regard to this way to specify tables is they've actually linked to a couple of online markdown facilitators that will help you create a table instead of you having to script it from scratch. So I want to leave this open as well because we might come back to it. I imagine that's something that we might want to use. I'm going to close out of, sorry, Yosemite Sam and Bugs. Sorry, Yosemite and Bugs, but we're going to close out of your session. And this isn't something we need a project for, so I'm just going to look for a script that is safe to work with. Now we did this last week, so we apparently just made an HTML file with Spider-Man in it. Going to give it a little content, so we'll just say paragraph 1 or section 1 and section 2. In Quarto, if you don't specify the format, it's going to assume that you're doing an HTML file, but we'll be explicit with it here. We'll just put that there. And in section 1, I'm gonna put the table that I've actually copied from the posit page. This is a markdown table. So go ahead and render that. These attributes here, these curly bracket attributes, it's this scripting structure here is unique to markdown tables. This is not something, actually it's not something I want to cover tonight, so I'm just going to get rid of that. But let's go ahead and see if we get that same table. This must, okay, sorry. So the file I pulled is apparently associated with other files because I forgot last week we were actually doing websites. So we made a website last week. So I don't want to do that. Let's just create a new file, and we'll continue with the proliferation of QMDs on this poor computer. Probably why we had computer issues last week is just because I got so much just sheer crap. I'm gonna write over one of these. Let's do Goblin. I think Goblin we did last week too. Again, these names are kind of just off the cuff as we go. I think we did a picture of Green Goblin because we're contrasting it with Spider-Man, and Green Goblin is one of Spider-Man's nemesis. I think he's kind of like the chief nemesis. He's him and Doc Ock. So Doctor Octopus, he's another frequent Spider-Man villain. So let's try that again in a new file here, just an independent HTML file, and we'll see what our table looks like. Yay, there it is. And this is what we expect markdown tables to look like. I do want to see if that works within a PDF and a typist document. PDF documents traditionally had a different way of scripting tables and many other things. But the Quarto team's done a really good job, I think, of trying to get to a point where the way that you structure things like this, like tables, don't have a massive consequence in terms of the product type that you're trying to produce. So that's great. I mean, we would have to play with it, so it kind of right-sized itself, which is different. But it actually made it, and that's super cool. Again, I don't use these sorts of I don't do tables this way pretty much ever. And you're seeing little formatting differences, but the main thing that we're interested in here is that all three main product types are actually doing fine with the markdown specification of a table. What we want to try is we want to try these list tables. Now, before we do that, let me show you how these table generators are helpful in terms of creating the markdown specification. So here you can kind of see what should look somewhat familiar to what we have here on lines 8 through 12. What we have on lines 8 through 12 is just a table with content populated in it. It has fruits, it has prices, it has the actual values of fruits for apple, pear, and orange. And what we have here is just blank. So it's just, there's nothing in here. You can, I believe, in this particular editor, I think, let's see. So if I start to fill in content here, dairy, can you tell I used to work in a grocery store? I'll call these canned goods. I believe, oh, this is a little wonky to work with. Again, I don't use markdown tables almost ever, really, but so this is kind of new to me. But if I use this generate button, I'll get a markdown table specification already made for me. If I want to add a column, I can do that. And so what are we missing here? We're missing vegan. I don't know. We're missing organic, I guess. And organic, I'll put a couple of values in. Giraffe and lobster. I'm kind of in a goofy mood tonight. I don't know why. I'm hoping that it's gonna rain. It's kind of been looking like it's gonna rain all day. And I had a friend come over this morning and put some fertilizer on my lawn, and he was saying how important it is that I water it. And I did water it, but my hose is really short and doesn't really reach. And it's just silly issues. But I was kind of hoping it might rain. It still looks like it might. Okay, I'm going to copy this table that we made that has 6 different columns in it. And it has a header as well, but then it only has three kind of traditional rows to it. And let's go ahead and put it in here and see what that looks like. The reason I'm doing this is I've never used one of those online helpers, but I can really see where if you're going to specify tables this way, I can see where that's probably something useful that you might want to do. Okay, so there's our normal markdown table, and that's kind of, from my perspective, that's what we're contrasting the new thing with is this specification. And again, these get really unwieldy with more information. The other thing that can kind of get thrown off is if you had Snuffleupagus or Pegasus or something, then you can start to see where the desired lining up of this content from just a human perspective gets off. And so it's easy to kind of start to lose track of what goes where on these things. Now, the actual location of the pipes themselves should be inconsequential. So we should still be able to get the same table here, even though it looks different. We'll try it and see. That might have been something that changed as well. Like I said, this is not a process that I use that frequently. Yeah, so it worked just fine, which is, I guess, good and bad. Mostly good. So the pipings themselves can be kind of a source of frustration using these markdown tables. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the main reasons I don't really use them, is because this process of just kind of trying to figure out where things align vertically, it frustrates me quite a bit. Now, the way I would normally do a table is I would probably create an object, and I don't want to create one tonight just because I don't want to spend a half hour doing that. So we'll just use the empty cars data. Take a look at that. There's 11 variables with 32 observations. The way I would normally do a table would just be to use probably cable or cable extra. And we can see if we can do the whole table, or the whole 32 observations. So cable and cable extra are great for the types of documents that we use. There's all kinds of formatting that you can do to this on a HTML table. It just comes in striped like this, which is fine. We could also hover. We could do all kinds of things. DT is another kind of fun one on I think it's just data table. It's a fun one on HTML files because there's some interactivity to it. And then, of course, tiny tables we've talked about. That's kind of my favorite go-to more recently. Here's the DT table where you can see you can kind of play with it in terms of what you want to be displayed. You can search for just Mazdas. There's only 2 Mazdas in the data set. So it's neat. It's fun. But we're not here for that. So if you wanted to specify a table not within a code chunk like we just did, but if you wanted to specify it using markdown, we could use this format, which is traditional, or we can try the new format, which is a list table. So the list table structure is quite a bit different. It uses the concept of bullets and bullet orderings. And let's just copy this one and we'll see what that looks like. I'm going to create a new section and we'll call it list table. And I'm just going to paste in what the good people at Posit created. You see there's a fenced div here, so those 3 colons start the fence, and then 3 colons, consecutive colons end the fence. Now in between here, what you're looking at is kind of a bullet structure. It doesn't look like bullets to me because when I bullet something, I don't use dashes. I like to use plus signs. But the Quarto people seem to actually prefer the dashes, and they got to have, I'm guessing, a good reason for that. I personally don't know what it is, but I'm sure they have a good reason for that. We don't use Python here, we use R, so I'm going to change that to an R chunk. One thing that's different here is the specification of the chunk. They're not using the curly bracket convention, so we might come back to that and see if that's going to interfere with our list table. There it is. That's super cool. The fact that there's a clipboard code chunk within the table itself, I think is so neat. And again, that has to be one of the reasons why you might want to use this way of specifying tables. Now we should be able to get all kinds of different formatting on here that we want as well. I'm going to get rid of the other stuff just so it's a little easier for us to focus on what we're trying to do here. I'm going to re-render that. First of all, let's put curly brackets around this or like we. Oh, I know why it's not going to like it, because it's going to want to try to actually interpret that like it normally would a code chunk within a QMD. Okay, interesting. So we'll go ahead and leave that. I don't know that we need anything there in terms of R or Python or otherwise. Okay. But if we have time, we'll come back and check that out. What I wanted to spend a little time on is the scripting that we've done here from lines 8 to 26 and what that looks like in terms of the rendered document. So my first specification here is the column headings, and then we're seeing full rows. So the full rows are specified within this nested bullet kind of structure. So the 2 bullets next to each other are saying it's a new row, and it's the first thing on the new row. And then it looks like what I'm actually getting. Oh, yeah. So each column is identified by a second level bullet. So that's interesting. So in the first value here that says sum, there's 2 bullets next to it, but the first one is simply saying this should not be put on the same line as the function and description. All right, so let's play with this a little bit. So we're going to add a third column, which is uselessness. And let's just see what that looks like without any content in it first. There it is, so it's plain. Now we know that we can add code chunks. Let's see. Let's see if we can add a picture. I don't know that we can, but what I'm doing right now is on line 14, I'm starting the first row specification. So here's the first column within the first row. Here's the second column within the first row. And now I'm going to specify the third column within the first row. And let's see if we can put an image in there. What image you good people want? Let's do a search for an image here. Let's look for a like and subscribe image. Ooh, GIF. We'll try GIFs after this, see if we can put a moving image in there. Kind of like this one. So I'm going to right click on that. And we'll go ahead and put that URL in. You can see RStudio is reading that as an actual image. I am curious to know if that's going to... Hey, look at that. I mean, so that's actually pretty cool. I have a extension loaded on my machine that I use for all of my icons and emojis. And so I used to have a few different ways of engaging with these, but currently I use the Iconify extension. And the Iconify extension pulls from everything in this repository that we're looking at right here. And these are Iconify design icons. It has, for example, R and RStudio. You kind of have to, the search function isn't great, so you kind of have to, develop a little experience with it in order to use it. But there's all kinds of, things we can put on here. Let's see if we can put a microphone on there. And so the site itself it's not the most user-friendly in terms of navigating. But the way in which we specify that, I'll put one outside of the table so we know that that'll work. And then we'll try putting it inside the table as well. So I'm going to render this without the icon rendered in the table just to see what that looks like. It should pop up here now to the right of my list tables. Oh, it didn't like that. I said we don't need to be in a project directory, and I guess I kind of lied. If we're going to do that, we do need to be in a project directory to access the extension. So let's try a GIF. Let's see if we can actually do a GIF. And again, I have no fetish with mermaids. It's just this is what comes up when I come to this site because of you people. When we did a session on mermaid diagrams, I pulled from this site for the slides, and then every time I go there now, that's what I see is that fish lady. Okay, so I'm gonna put fish lady here. We'll see if we can get her in this bottom rightmost space. So that would be row 2, column 3. Now you're seeing some sizing issues. So if we really wanted to mess with this, we'd probably see if we can work with the size of these objects as well. As a matter of fact, let's try that. So let's get a little more, and you can start to see how these files start to get a little messy in terms of just content in them. So there she is. I'm gonna work on this like and subscribe icon, and I would love to see if that is able to be resized a little bit. And I have no idea if it will, honestly. But if it does, and it did, wow, that's super cool. That is, okay, I love list tables. I really like them. Those are cool. Let's put that up to 100. And we should, if it works on that image, it should also work on my mermaid. Is that Ariel? I never saw the Little Mermaid, but it looks like that's, wait, that's not the one that I always go to on Giphy. Giphy takes me to a different one. I thought it took me to this one. See, this one is a little more risque because I don't I don't know. She doesn't look like she's wearing a top. At least Ariel, I think, yeah, she's got like, she's got something on there. The stuff we talk about on these weekly sessions. Okay, so I'm going to see if we can resize the Little Mermaid there using the same kind of attribute specification here in these curly brackets. And if so, that really truly is really neat. That is super cool. Wow. Okay. I can see myself now using these, especially in like these reveal.js slides. So sometimes for you good people, when I'm putting a slide deck together, I would like to have kind of an amalgamate, a mismatch of different types of things within the table. And for me, a lot of it's going to be just like weird images. I like having visually appealing slides. So to be able to do a code chunk that has a clipboard enabled with it next to images, next to resizable GIFs, man, that's super cool. Now, this is not gonna work great in a PDF or a typist document because there's no interaction, there's no interactivity that's enabled in those documents. So we'll see if it throws us an error, or maybe it'll just grab a screenshot, a still shot from that GIF. Now the image will likely come through, but the GIF, we don't know what's going to happen there. So when you see this updating TLMGR, and you're only going to see that when you're trying to render a traditional PDF. That's saying that it's seeing something in your script that it doesn't have the base capability to do. So that means it's going to try to self-correct itself. It's going to try to look for packages and capabilities that will do what it thinks you want to do. And so that's probably from, well, it could be from a number of things. It's probably either from the GIF itself, or it could be from our attempts here to use kind of HTML sizing. The sizing shouldn't work in the PDF. We're not expecting that to work. But I would think that it would, like, this should not be a fatal error. This should just be, it won't do what we want it to do. While we're waiting, let's see if we got something we can watch here. Is that Ace of Spades? I think I put that song in. I think I synced that music, I believe. There's a couple here that we don't show very often. Ouch. Well, looks like it hurts. And of course the do eat nuts at the gym cats is, I don't know why, but I think it's one of my favorites. The cat switched up on us. Yeah, okay, so we did get a fail here. So it did not like our GIF, which, fine. That's, again, kind of to be expected. We'll try a typist file. We're not going to have as long of a wait on typist if it doesn't work. Wow, typist. Did you really do that, typist? That's awesome. That is amazing. That is so cool. And it must have just grabbed kind of what it saw as it was rendering. So I assume we'll probably get a different image if we just re-render that. So we'll try that and see. No, we're getting the same. Looks like the same image to me. Let me see. Yeah, I think that's the same image. Let's just try it one third time to make sure. I wonder if that's kind of the start point for that, or the end point, or middle point. It looks like it's some static point, so it's doing the same. Okay. And so typist is such a hybrid thing that it's possible that these HTML commands are actually working in there. I don't expect them to, but they are. That's amazing. That's so cool. That is super cool. Typist, just the more we play. Oh, wow. So when it pulls up in my browser, it's actually not keeping the old. Huh. That's something that I wasn't anticipating. Uh, you know, the old making these sorts of documents, it went through a massive change maybe about a year ago or so in terms of kind of the interaction with the preview pane as well as the actual rendered documents. Uh, I'm still kind of I'm still kind of getting used to it. So I'm still thrown for a loop at times in terms of what I now expect to happen versus what's actually happening. Okay, that is so cool. I'm gonna go back to an HTML file type. We'll go ahead and keep the GIF and the picture in there in the third column. We could expand this further if we want, but I think you probably get a sense of how to navigate these just from what we did there in terms of adding a third, and then within each of these nested bullet specifications, the the kind of approaching content as an extra bullet does make sense. It's going to lead to long vertical, I suppose, specifications here in terms of we're now between line 8 and line 30, so that's a lot of vertical space just for kind of this small table. Um, but it's so neat. It is so neat. Okay, so let's see if we can do some formatting here to this thing. We should be able to take the header off if we want to do that. It looks like it's just header rows equals 0. We could maybe, since that's the structure, I wonder if we can make multiple header rows. And now if we look at our table right now, you're seeing kind of a little different formatting here in terms of the header. It's just bold, so it's bolded content. We can just say no, and and it just changed the formatting. So it kept the content, but it lost the formatting. So we're not bolded anymore. Now, if I say header rows are 2, it's going to apply that content formatting to the first 2 columns. Okay. So I mean, that big whoop on that one, but kind of neat that you can control it like that. Column alignment is pretty neat. So we should be able to change. This should take left, right, and center in terms of alignment. I don't want to copy the whole thing, but it's clipboard's just right in the way. I'm gonna have to remember that there's a dangling closed parenthesis there that we're gonna have to accommodate. There we go. So table aligns, we'll do, what do we currently have? It looks like left justified on all of them. The image, it's hard to get a sense on the image, just because we don't know the border, we don't know the size of the image, the dimensions of the image. It would be nice to be able to do some vertical specification. I'm not sure if that's an attribute that is supported here or not. Let's see if we can just right justify everything. So I'm gonna say right. We'll re-render. And it just the bullets, it left the bullets on the left of the cell. Did this code block change? That is a little surprising. So let's get that middle cell, let's put it back to left justified, just because the content works a lot better that way. And yeah, it did actually shift the content within our code block when we right justified it. Wow, that's pretty powerful. That's pretty cool. All right, well, we got to do some cross references at least, see if we can do that, because you don't just want a table hanging out there. You want to be able to link to it and acknowledge it. The table call widths, so that's kind of a shared specification in terms of scripting structure that is supported by markdown. All of this stuff is supported by markdown tables as well. It's just the place where it wants us to specify them is a little different. So this call widths in square brackets, for us, we would apply that. We would cut it in thirds because we have 3 columns. Here we go. Captions and cross references. This is what I want. Ooh, this is weird. Add a caption by including a paragraph at the start. That's really weird. I wasn't expecting that. Okay, so this is weird. So what we're expecting to happen now is we're going to get a title on this table. And there it is, kind of center justified. That, again, that's just default. That's generally not sufficient when we're specifying these tables. We want to give it a table number, and we want to be able to cross-reference it. So we're going to have to get a little more specific here. Oh, so it's just doing the tag within the curly brackets again. That makes a lot of sense. So it did it first. I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but we'll call it table weird. And now, in addition to this is super weird, we should get a table number on there. There we go. It's table 1 because it's the only one that we have specified in our very small document here. We should be able to, if you'd like to see something super weird, please take a look at, oh, I can't type tonight. And then we'll add TBL weird. Now we should have a Quarto cross-reference. And again, in these HTML documents, you get a nice preview upon hover over that. And then if you engage with it, it'll take you to it. In our small document, that taking to it doesn't really, you're not saving a lot of energy there. Okay, so that's cross-referencing and labeling. That's pretty cool. I did kind of like the striping that we saw. Ooh, look at this. So you can create complex, so our table looks a little complex just in terms of the information in the second column is more vertically, there's more vertical depth to it as opposed to information in the first column. So it almost looks like there's kind of some spanning, but there's no spanning going on. That there is a capability to do that though. So we can actually have content that spans columns or spans rows. So that's super cool. For complex tables, you might want to do that. As a psychologist, the data tables that we present oftentimes are very specific in terms of something that is super ordinate and covering other things. And so you might have need for that. I can see this getting very unwieldy very quickly. But again, this is something that you probably engage with an AI with, and they could generate that for you. Okay, so that's, let me see what else we can do in terms of attributes. Now what I want to find is a listing of what are called bootstrap, I think classes, I think they call them. And so this should tell us some of the stuff that we should expect to be able to do with this table. And so if you'll bear with me as I'm kind of talking as I'm scrolling. There we go. Here's the classes. I don't know if I said that right or not. But striped is something I think that we can play with. Hover is something that we can play with. It looks like it's just dot striped dot hover. So what hover does is you can see it, the row itself is changing based on where I am relative to it. So let's see if we can at least get it striped. You can see we're starting to get we're starting to get our fence that's really loaded up with a lot of stuff. I'll probably take the alignment off if this works, just so there's less for us to look with. Hey, striped worked great. I mean, there's only 2 rows, so it's kind of hard to see. Let's add a third row. So a third row will just continue. We'll just continue with our bullets here, and we'll say this is third. This is third A. I might as well do fourth as well. This is fourth A. And then in the final column, we'll do this is third B. And this is fourth B. So we should have 4 rows now on our table. Didn't like something. I have my console so minimized here I can't really see what's going on. Huh. Okay. So I'm guessing there's a space, probably a space issue here that is interfering. It's not spaces. It might be the images that we have. So let's try putting those above instead of below. And again, this is not a process I'm familiar with. Tonight's the first we played with it. But I'm aware that spaces are often consequential. Spaces are often consequential within these sorts of things. Okay, so I'm thinking about it wrong. So what we had done, we were adding it in the wrong spot is what was going on. So if we're to think about this again, so I have my 3 columns, and then first row. Oh, silly. So each unique set of things is its own row. So what I added was wrong. What we needed to add a third row here. And then we'll have a third A, a third B, and a third C. I don't know what I was thinking. Again, it's not that difficult to get really kind of turned around in these things, and that's what just happened. That's what just happened to me. Okay, there we go. So let's add a fourth just quickly now that we know how to do that. And again, these kind of self-contained blocks of information. That's how. So within these list tables, each kind of block like we're doing now is its own row. Okay, cool. Then we'll just see if we can add the hover attribute as well as we're stacking all kinds of things on here. And now that should add a little more interactivity to our table. Yeah, neat. So now it is giving the user some feedback with regard to where they are. Now there's nothing really all that clickable here. You're seeing the code blocks getting a little harder to see. But look at that mismatch of content. We got images, we got GIFs, we got code blocks, we got just plain text. That's awesome. I love it. Okay, super neat. So thanks for bearing with me, people. If there's anything you want to see me cover, drop me a note. Otherwise, I'll just keep kind of doing what seems to make sense to me. Now, I think we've run through the Quarto 1.9 things that at least the Quarto team really wanted to highlight. I'm sure there's other things there that we didn't cover. But on these weekly sessions, I will make sure to kind of keep up with Quarto releases at least. That's been kind of fun. That's been a way for me to identify content that we can cover. So, in the absence of questions, I'll just find something that either I'm doing this week that I thought I could share with people, or I guess I'll just kind of raid the Quarto or the R Markdown help pages and see if there's something there that looks interesting. Okay, thanks people. See you next week.